You're not a leader if you're always just reacting. You're essentially a human Slack bot. Your calendar dings, you get a notification, and off you go rushing to do whatever the calendar tells you you've got to do. That's not leadership. That's not taking the lead. That's just being reactive, and we cannot call that leadership. Today, I want to talk to you about a concept that I think will really help you step out of the rat race and become the leader you ought to be, and that's leadership blocks, which will make the time you need in order to be a genuine leader. If your calendar shows you that you're always running from meeting to meeting, you're always putting out fires, you're always there busy, it usually means that you're lacking the actual time, the actual space that it takes to be a leader. Because leadership doesn't happen in reactions or just in reaction. It cannot really take place in the tiny cracks you hopefully have between Zoom meetings. It is about being intentful, being deliberate, and taking the time to actually think what you want to do. Taking the time to do the work, because not all the work can happen in meetings with others. Sometimes you actually have to think about things before acting, which is usually what we do in meetings. Leadership blocks are about helping you unlock that capability, helping you become a leader by putting into practice what it means to think about things, to lead, to not just be acting from one meeting to the next, but being more purposeful with how you want to use your time. This will help you shift things around from being led by the calendar, by having the meetings be in control of you, to being in control of your time, to shifting things into a position where you're a lot more proactive. It will make a huge difference in how you view yourself as a leader and will help you become much more impactful, as I've seen with a lot of people. So today, in this video, we'll talk about leadership blocks, what they are, how you should be using them, how to start implementing them if you think it's impossible to find the time, etc. Okay, by the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive coach and consultant, and I help people just like you make this transition from being reactive leaders to being real, genuine leaders, creating teams worth leading, because time is short, life is short, and you don't want to waste that leading mediocre teams. And if you want to create amazing teams, you've got to make the time to create them. And this is what we're going to be talking about. So to make this transition from reactive to proactive, we need to introduce leadership blocks. This is a concept I talked about in my first book, The Tech Executive Operating System. And since then, I've heard from so many people who implemented this, stupid, easy, simple, little change in their calendars and saw huge benefits. What is it about? Leadership blocks are meetings that you block the time on your calendar for yourself to be a leader. This is a meeting with yourself where you're going to be taking control of the time. This is not a buffer between calls for you to have a bio break. This is a work session for you to do actual work in regularly. You should have a few of those in a week. We're going to talk about that later, but the concept itself is very simple. We block time on the calendar for ourselves and ensure that that time remains there. Depending on your flexibility, yeah, of course, if something explodes in the company, you have to deal with the biggest outage you've ever seen. Okay, I'm gonna move the leadership block like I would have moved anything else probably. But in general, you should treat those as commitments, as things that you do not cancel just because someone else asks, hey, do you have 20 minutes? If you have to, I prefer to move them like I would move other meetings, as opposed to just canceling and overlapping them with other meetings. Because you have to be true to yourself. This is a simple fix, but not necessarily easy to implement, and this is the hardest part. Committing to yourself that you're gonna use those leadership blocks and not just let them go away unused or used by other things. Now, what do you do in a leadership block? Again, I stress, leadership blocks are not about being buffers or being time for banging out a few quick emails, going through your inbox, doing that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that I hope you do in the little time you've got between meetings usually as opposed to leadership blocks, which should be real work sessions. Think about the coders in your organization that have their sessions where they work for an hour thinking about a problem, tackling it, getting a pull request sent at the end of it because they actually got something done. Leadership blocks are about the same for you. There's not about doing a bunch of tiny admin stuff. Hopefully, you can move those to different times on your calendar. Leadership blocks are sessions where you're deliberately doing some deep work, where you're transitioning from the reactive mode you are in meetings to taking the lead. Maybe you need to think about the strategy, about the organization structure, about how your org has been performing the past quarter, about maybe changing some processes, things that usually require some real thinking, some introspection, from some research from time to time. Maybe you want to learn about a competitor, learn about what the company is doing and seeing with your own hands, or what customers are saying. So you want to review things from the past month. Actual work that usually never happens, but will provide you with a tangible change in how you perform your work, because you'll be equipped with actual thinking to base your strategy on. You'll be equipped with actual knowledge because you tried that product. You saw what customers are saying in customer interviews. You took the time to do that, and now you're a better leader thanks to that. That's what leadership blocks should be about. Real work, as in at the end of a block, you should know what you've gained. Not just getting your unread count on your inbox or on Slack lowered, but actually doing something meaningful, getting some results. That's what we want those to be. Deep work, if you know or follow the work of Cal Newport, this is similar to that. You taking the time to be an actual leader. To start implementing leadership blocks, first, you need to realize that it's time to put things the other way around from what you're used to. Most people I work with start with having their calendar be some sort of an inbox. They get requests, they get people putting their hands all over your time, and you just accept that for the way it is. But leadership blocks help you be a lot more intentional with your time, because I want you to take a second and think, what should your week look like? What you should be doing, and having that in mind will help you transition your calendar slowly but surely towards a better situation. So think right now, what should your time go into? Not what it usually goes into, but what should it look like? For example, decide that you would really like, because you know you're more effective, in the mornings, in the afternoons, whatever, to have leadership blocks then, and start seeing how you can make space for those. I have videos about calendar resets that are really good to help gain some time, and I'll link to those. You'll probably see a card on screen or something, but in general, make the time for your leadership block. And then, because you're being deliberate, because you thought about how you like to use the time, don't just move things with a calendar reset and let the time you just recovered be eaten up by other meetings. You take the charge and decide about the leadership blocks that you want to put in there. Making the time for yourself, making the time to be a leader. I recommend starting with 2 blocks a week of 30 minutes each. That's a bare minimum. And if that sounds like a reach, it means that you really need some help. So do a calendar reset. Take the time. If you need more help than that, my email's somewhere in the video description probably, and you can reach out to me. But really, at least get those 2 sessions a week, and you're going to be building up to more with time, because I'll tell you later what I think is ideal, but at least have those. Now, when you have those leadership blocks, again, don't just have them reach the time between meetings and then you're just sitting there wondering, oh, what should I be doing now? And have those 30 minutes just be unproductive because you don't even know what you're going to do. Treat those like you would treat a different project. Have ahead of time your low backlog, or know what you'd like to achieve in that time. So when the meeting previously ends, you immediately know what you ought to be doing, and you go into thinking mode, be it thinking about a specific problem, be it researching something that is on your mind and you know you need to gain some more knowledge about, practicing something, whatever it is. Have that ahead of time. Like when I used to be a coder for a living, I really liked at the end of the day to leave, not be done with a feature by the end of the day, but actually be somewhere in the middle of work and leave the actual line of code where I was with some comments saying, dumping the context of where I was. So in the morning, where for me personally, it's a lot harder to start gaining momentum, it was a lot easier because I just saw that and immediately, bang, I need to just start gliding into work. I don't need to start thinking which task and which one to do, who do I need to talk to. I'm in the middle of something, I have the context, I just get into that. I do the same nowadays with my writing. When I wrote my books, I usually ended every writing session with what the next one needs to be about, what my thoughts were, so I would start the next writing session similarly. I want you to do the same with leadership blocks. So when you make the time for them, think about, assign something to that time. Don't let it just be random time that you decide on the spot what you're going to do, because chances are you're not going to be making a very good decision on the spot. Take time ahead of that to decide what you want to do. If you finish early, fine, go have a coffee or choose something else on the spot. But at least have a theme for the leadership block that's upcoming, so when it starts, you know what you want to do. It will make them a tenfold more impactful and effective having that in your mind ahead of time. Wrap up a leadership block with a short review. A review takes 30 seconds. I want you to write down in your notes or whatever what you had actually achieved, what you should be doing next. This will really help you as you're planning the next leadership blocks, and also seeing the value of the leadership block documented in a single sentence in front of you will really help you see as these accumulate, see why it's important to make the time for it, why you should fight to maintain that hour in your week, even if it's hard, because you'll see the difference that it makes week after week after week. Having that list just get longer and longer and longer with every win you've had in a leadership block in the past month or so. So do that. Don't just run to the next meeting. Be responsible. Remember a minute or two before time is up to take a second and think about what you've achieved, so that next time you're going to be even more effective. Again, these are simple things that I work with my clients on, but they make an impact, because if you work on them, you really see compounding benefits. You get better regularly. That's what this is all about. That's the game. Having said that, what should you be aspiring to is working towards having leadership blocks, not 2 a week, 30 minutes, but having one every day, at least one every day, and having at least a couple a week be an hour or an hour and a half. This is where you're going to be making a lot of real thinking, taking the lead, actually shaping what your organization is going to be about. And you'll find yourself entering coaching sessions, entering one-on-ones, entering planning meetings, having so much more context, being so much more prepared, that all the meetings around are going to be a lot more effective, that you're going to have less things fall between the cracks, that you're going to be on top of things, you're going to be intentful, deliberate, you come to things having your agenda, knowing what you'd like to achieve, knowing where you're spending time on something. Not having all of those meetings. I hate seeing those meetings where we go into something, we talk for 30 minutes, realize no one really knows, we don't really have the data, let's talk about it again. When you have the time to drill down into matters, to do your research, to come prepared, you will be so much more effective as a leader, that you're going to be making things that are dramatically more impactful. You're going to be creating an organization that's just a different sort of game. And that's, again, if you go back to what I talked about, the end goal, having an organization that just energizes you, that brings the company so much impact. So we actually get this win-win going on, as opposed to waking up on Monday and feeling the grind. I don't want you to be there. And one last tip, if you're the sort of leader leading other leaders, other managers, you need to pass this on. You need to teach them how to take control of their own leadership position and have leadership blocks on their own. Because if you do that, I just described how much more effective you can be as a leader. Just think what it will make, what a difference it will make for the organization if the people reporting to you will also be doing that. A lot of engineers do that. We protect engineering time, right? We protect maker schedule, but we don't protect leadership schedules in the same way. Usually we don't even think about them in that way, but you ought to. So allowing your leaders in your organization to take the time for themselves will make a big impact on their abilities, will make them lead others even better, and will usually make you have an easier life, because if people under you are working more effectively, you can focus on other things. Again, this creates this win-win cycle that I'm in love with. When I see that happening in a company, I can tell that things are going in the right direction, and that's what I want you to create. Make these leadership blocks, as I wrote about them years ago, into something that fuels the creativity, the deliberateness of yourself and every other leader in the organization to create something that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So to sum this up, leadership is not what you do in meetings. It's not what you do between meetings when you have 5 minutes. It's about the time you carve, that you protect, that you use very well in order to do the actual leadership work. When you put a stake in the ground and say, I need that time. This is what I deserve. This is what my team deserves to have a real leader. When you actually claim that and use that efficiently, you'll see things go much smoother, much easier. And again, you'll be creating the sort of organization you want to create, the sort of organization that energizes you even more. I don't think there's anything real other that you can do if you want to be a leader long term. If you just keep on reacting, you're going to burn out. You're going to create a team that's brittle. But if you will work on this habit of taking the time to be the leader the team deserves, you'll slowly create something that becomes better, that ages like fine wine and not like, I don't know, cheese left out of the fridge. That's it. If you got anything out of this video, I really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. I hate saying that, but apparently that's important in today's world. And if you have any comments, write them down. I read everything. I'm not getting out too many of those. I'll see you next week. Cheers.